This happened a little over a year ago. I was 45 and had spent most of my life on this ranch. It was my home, yet I felt lost. The droughts had been brutal. My livestock was suffering and my once thriving farm was turning into a graveyard of dust. I needed to replace my dying bull if I wanted any chance at a breeding season. The thought of losing everything haunted me day and night. I heard whispers about a neighboring farm that had a bull. They said he was special, almost magical. At first I brushed it off, but desperation pushed me to drive over one sweltering afternoon. The farm was old and overgrown, the kind of place where good things went to die. The owner was a man I barely knew. We exchanged words, and when he handed over that massive dark bull, I felt an uneasy tension in the air. Still, I was too desperate to care. When I got back to my ranch, the sky felt gray. I looked up, expecting clouds, but the day was clear. I shrugged it off. In the days that followed, I noticed the cows acting strange. They huddled in the corners of the pen, bellowing for no reason. I thought I was just stressed, but something in my gut told me otherwise. Then, shadows began flickering in the barn. I convinced myself it was just my tired eyes playing tricks on me. But an unsettling feeling gnawed at me. At night the sounds grew worse. I lay awake, listening to low growls and odd noises drifting through the open window. Cold air swept across the room. I felt like something lurked near. My heart raced, but I forced myself to think it was just the wind. Still, I felt trapped in my own home. Days turned into weeks, and my crops withered away. I worked on them daily, but they looked lifeless. The sky was clear, yet the land felt cursed. I could see that bull standing out there in the grazing field, its dark eyes gleaming like it knew something I didn't. I slowly began to wonder if it was the animal itself bringing this misery. Then, I remember that night clearly. I was in the barn checking the feed when a sharp metallic scent filled the air. I turned slowly, and there it was, the bull, just standing there. It wasn't like the others. It felt wrong, heavy and oppressive. I wanted to leave, but my legs wouldn't move. Suddenly I heard a rustle behind me. I spun around but saw nothing. My heart was pounding in my chest. Then it happened. A figure moved in the shadows. I couldn't make sense of it. My chest felt tight. Every instinct told me to run, but fear held me in place. I felt I had traded my last hope for something dark and twisted. What had I really brought into my life? I couldn't shake the dread that loomed over me. The ranch I had loved for so long turned into a nightmare. I was lost, trapped by my own choices, with the unseen terror watching me. The weight of my decisions pressed down like a storm, and I knew deep down that I had unleashed something I could never control. The next morning I woke up late. The sun hung high and the heat seeped through the walls of my house. I could hear the animals stirring outside, but there was a strange hush to it all. I decided I had to check on my cows. Maybe they needed a little more attention, a little more love. After all, that's what ranching is about. As I stepped outside, the air felt thick. The familiar smells of hay and earth were muffled under an uneasy silence. The cows were quieter than usual, clustered together and watching the bull. Their heads bobbed nervously, as if sensing something heavy hanging over them. That sent a chill down my spine. I walked closer, making my way toward the pen. The bull stood in the middle, staring right at me. Its dark eyes felt cold and calculating. I shook my head, trying to dismiss it. "You're just overthinking," I muttered to myself. But then, I noticed something on the ground. There, in the dirt, were strange tracks, big, deep marks, unlike anything I'd seen before. I knelt down, confused. They were too large to be from my cows or that bull. The marks led away from the barn and toward the trees lining the edge of my property. A knot formed in my stomach. Something was out there. I spent the rest of the day checking the fences and trying to keep my mind off the growing unease. But the feeling wouldn't leave me. I kept glancing toward the trees, half expecting to see a figure move between the shadows. My eyes couldn't relax. As dusk settled in, I decided to go back to the barn and check if the feed needed refilling. I stepped inside, and the familiar scent hit me, the mix of hay and earth. But it felt off, as if the space itself was holding its breath. The shadows danced along the walls, and I felt watched. That's when I heard it. A low, guttural sound drifting from the corner of the barn. I froze. It was like nothing I'd ever heard before, a sound that seemed to claw at the air. I glanced behind me. Nothing but darkness. My instinct screamed at me to leave, but I needed to know. I took a few steps toward the sound. The low growling continued, echoing in the stillness, and then I saw it, a flicker of movement in the corner just behind the feed barrels. My heart raced. I swallowed hard, trying to calm myself. One more step, and I would know what lay hidden in the shadows. Just as I reached the edge of the darkened area, the air suddenly turned icy. My breath came out in bursts. I strained to see what was there when a loud crash rang out behind me, the barn door swinging shut with a bang. The darkness swallowed the room and the growling stopped. Everything felt wrong. I pushed against the door, desperate to get out, but it wouldn't budge. Then I remembered the bull outside, standing there watching. It was like the creature was waiting for something, and now, so was I. The silence felt suffocating, and panic began to swim in my chest. In that moment I knew I wasn't alone, not just inside the barn, but on this ranch. Something had followed me home. What was this thing I had let into my life? As I leaned against the door, fear coursing through me, I felt the weight of my choices closing in. Then, in the pitch black, I heard a whisper. "You should have left it alone." Chapter 2. I froze. The whisper echoed in my ears, and I glanced around the barn, searching for the source. Shadows danced and twisted, but nothing emerged. I pressed my back against the door, wishing for some light, but darkness enveloped me. Fear gnawed at my mind. My thoughts raced. What did I let in? I needed to stay calm. I took a slow breath, trying to think. The barn was my sanctuary. I couldn't let it turn into a tomb. Then I heard a soft thud from the corner. The growling wasn't gone after all. I peered into the darkness, straining my eyes, but there was still nothing visible. Instinct kicked in. Even if the door wouldn't budge, I had to find a way out of this. I turned away from the door, searching for something, anything, to light my way. I remembered the lantern on the shelf. I shuffled toward it, moving carefully in the shadowy barn. Something cold brushed against my ankle, and I jumped, nearly falling. That's when I heard breathing, deep and steady. I froze. "Just the wind," I whispered, but my voice trembled. I reached for the lantern, fumbling with the latch. My fingers trembled as I finally lit it, a small flame flickering to life. The warm light chased away some of the darkness. When I turned back to the corner, my heart dropped. The shape was there, shifting just beyond the feed barrels. It was large, too large for a stray animal, towering and muscular. Its eyes shone like twin coals, glinting in the lantern light. I felt a cold shiver slither down my spine. "Who's there?" I called out. But my voice broke. I was met with silence. The creature held its ground, its breath like thunder. I took a step back, glancing at the door again. Then it lunged forward, snapping its jaws, and I barely managed to sidestep in time. The creature charged at me, wild and unpredictable. Heart racing, I stumbled backward, throwing the lantern toward it. Glass shattered and flames ignited the straw on the floor. Panic surged through me as I turned and pounded against the barn door. It finally gave way, just as the creature crashed into the wall behind me, sending debris flying. I stumbled out into the cool night air, gasping for breath. I turned back just in time to see the creature emerge from the smoke-filled barn. Its outline was enormous and frightening, fearsome in the shadows, but I now had more questions than ever. What was it? Why was it here? And what did it want from me? I felt the ground shake beneath me as the beast let out a roar that echoed in the night. It sent my heart racing again, and I couldn't think straight. It was time to act. Without another second to lose, I sprinted towards the trees, hoping they provided some kind of cover. As I ran, I didn't dare look back, but the thudding footsteps made it clear. I was being hunted. Then I recognized the tracks in the dirt, the ones I had seen earlier. They were fresh and deeper now, and they led into the heart of the woods. Maybe that was where I could find some answers. Or maybe it was where I'd find my end. Chapter 3. I stumbled into the woods, branches scratching at my arms like long, clinging fingers. The underbrush crunched beneath my feet, each sound amplifying the fear creeping back in. I needed a plan, but all I could think about was the creature chasing me. Suddenly the roar echoed again, slicing through the night air. It was closer this time. I ducked behind a thick tree trunk, my heart hammering in my chest. I could hear the creature's heavy breathing, but it was mixed with something else, a soft rustling ahead. I peered around the tree, curiosity battling my instinct to hide. Moving through the foliage was a shadow, smaller than the beast but equally unsettling. It was a figure, crouched low, blending into the darkness. My heart raced. Who was it? Was it friend or foe? Before I could call out, the figure turned, and I caught a glimpse of wide, terrified eyes. "Help!" it whispered, scrambling back behind the roots of a tree. I noticed the dirt around them was disturbed, suggesting they had been trying to dig their way out. "What? Who are you?" I responded, my voice barely above a whisper. I couldn't risk drawing the creature's attention. "They're coming. You need to run." The figure shivered, glancing back in the direction I had just come from. "Who? What's chasing you?" I asked, inching closer despite every nerve in my body screaming at me to flee. It was clear they were just as scared as I was. "It's not just the creature. There are more. I saw them earlier by the creek, dark shapes, all of them." My breath hitched. More. I didn't want to think about that. "We need to find a way out of here. This isn't safe." They nodded, their face pale in the dim light. As we stood there, the roar came again, louder and angrier. "We have to go. Now." With a quick glance back, I darted toward a narrow path that led away from the creature. The figure followed close behind. The sound of footsteps echoed behind us, and I felt the ground tremble. Panic gripped me tight. We moved through the trees, but it felt like every shadow was alive, watching us. I needed to focus. We couldn't run aimlessly. There had to be a way out of this nightmare. Then, in the distance, I saw flickering lights. A cabin. It looked abandoned, but it was better than the woods. "Over there!" I pointed, and we sprinted towards it. As we approached, my heart sank. The door was ajar, swaying slightly, like an invitation or a trap. I hesitated, but the sounds behind us were growing louder. I shoved the door open and rushed inside. The cabin was dark and musty, a layer of dust blanketing everything. Old furniture lay scattered around, a table tipped over, chairs stacked in a corner. Frantic, I searched for something, anything, that could help. "Do you have any idea what's out there?" My voice was edged with urgency. "No," my companion responded, eyes wide with fear. "But I think it knows we're here." Just then, a loud crash echoed from outside. The creature had found its way to the cabin. The door splintered as it slammed into the frame, furiously trying to get in. My heart raced, adrenaline coursing through me. "We have to barricade the door," I shouted, scrambling to push a nearby table against it. As I shoved it into place, I glanced nervously at my newfound companion. That's when I saw something shining on the floor, a knife, partially hidden in the dust. Grabbing it, I held it tight, ready for whatever came next. The door buckled again, and I knew it was only a matter of time before it burst through. What awaited us outside could be worse than the creature, but there was no choice left. As the door cracked open, I took a deep breath, ready to face whatever came next. Chapter 4. The door splintered with a sickening crack, and I pressed my back against the wall, clutching the knife like a lifeline. My heart pounded in my ears as I watched the door bend inward. I couldn't see the creature in the darkness, but I could feel its presence, heavy and suffocating. "Stay behind me," I whispered to my companion. They nodded, eyes wide with fear, trembling like a leaf in a storm. The last thing I wanted was to show any weakness, but panic clawed at my throat. I had no idea what was about to crash through the door. A low growl rumbled from outside, vibrating through the wooden floorboards. My grip tightened on the knife. I didn't know how I planned to use it, but I couldn't let that thing get to us. Another powerful thrust hit the door, and the gap widened. Just a few more pushes and it would break through completely. Then, from somewhere in the cabin, a soft creaking sound pierced the tension, causing my nerves to spike. "Did you hear that?" I hissed, glancing towards the dark corners of the room. My companion hardly nodded, fear etched on their face. There was something else in the cabin. I took a step, keeping my back to the door, and scanned the darkness. Shadows clung to the walls like living things, shifting silently. A dim light, flickering from a rusty lantern on the shelf, cast eerie patterns on the floor. I peered deeper into the gloom, each creak of the floorboards beneath my feet amplifying my anxiety. "Focus," I told myself. I had to keep it together. Suddenly, the door shuddered violently again, and splintered wood flew into the room. I could just make out a clawed hand reaching through the rubble, long and jagged, searching. My breath caught in my throat. It was only a moment before it would be inside, and then what? "Run!" I shouted at my companion, not knowing where to go. Just then, a howl pierced through the chaos outside, and I knew we could not stay trapped here. With one last glance at the door, I bolted toward the back window. It was small and barred, but desperation surged through me. I grabbed the rusty metal frame and pulled with all my strength. To my surprise, it gave way, sending dust into the air. "I think I can fit," I shouted to my companion, glancing back at them. There was no time to hesitate as the creature let out another primal roar, this time sounding almost human. It sent shivers down my spine. "No, we have to find another way," they cried, shaking their head. Before I could argue, a loud crash resonated from the front of the cabin. The wooden door buckled in with a final snap. I felt the hairs on my neck stand up. Something darker was coming through. I had to make a choice. I could either help my companion escape through the window or face whatever was breaking down that door. I turned to see the silhouette of a large figure filling the doorway, its eyes glowing like embers in the dark. It was now or never. "Come on," I called, grabbing their wrist. Just before I could hurl myself through the window, a hand shot out from behind the wall and grabbed my shoulder, spinning me around. "Let go of them." A low voice growled, and as I looked into the eyes of another figure, everything went dark. I had no idea who was in the cabin with us. Chapter 5. I came to with a dull ache throbbing at the back of my head and the taste of metal in my mouth. I blinked against the dim light filtering through the cabin's cracked windows. My heart raced as the memories flooded back. Impact, darkness, the figure. I staggered to my feet, disoriented. "Where are you?" I called out, my voice coming out hoarse and shaky. The cabin was eerily quiet now, the tension that had filled the air moments ago replaced with an unsettling stillness. I couldn't see my companion. Panic bubbled up in my chest. "Over here." Their voice was faint, muffled. I turned toward the sound and spotted them lying slumped against the wall, a figure beside them. My stomach dropped. "Get away from them," I shouted, instinctively gripping the knife tighter. The silhouette turned. It was a person, though their eyes glinted oddly in the low light. Too bright, too intense. A creepy smile stretched across their face. "Calm down, friend. I'm not here to hurt anyone," they said, their tone almost soothing. "But you're—" "Shh." They raised a finger to their lips, as if to silence my fears. "You've both had quite the scare. You're safe now." My eyes darted to my companion. They looked dazed, but unharmed. Still, I didn't trust this stranger. "What do you want?" I demanded, glancing at the gap where the door had been splintered, half expecting the creature to burst through at any moment. The stranger crouched down, their smile never wavering. "Just a trade," they said. "Your fears for the knowledge of what lurks outside." "What do you mean? What's out there?" I asked, stepping closer but keeping the knife ready. "More than you can imagine. Something that needs to be contained." They gestured toward the door. "You see, not all creatures are what they seem. Some of us protect others from the darkness." I tried to decipher their intent. Were they friend or foe? I had been in the dark long enough. "Tell me what you know," I demanded, my voice rising. But just then, the distant howl of the creature echoed through the woods. It sent a shiver down my spine. The figure straightened, eyes narrowing. "It's getting closer." "Then why are we still here?" I snapped. "We need to move." "I can help you both, but you must trust me." The stranger's voice turned urgent. "You want to survive? Follow me." I hesitated, adrenaline still coursing through my veins. I didn't know whether to run or to fight the stranger, but the growl outside intensified, and the air felt electric with danger. "Now," the figure insisted, a mix of fear and determination in their eyes. Then, everything broke loose. The sound of cracking wood filled the air, a clear sign that whatever was outside wanted in. I grabbed my companion's arm. Instinct took over, and together we followed the stranger deeper into the cabin. That's when things got worse. Just as I crossed the threshold of the next room, the lantern flickered violently. Shadows danced around us, and I realized that we weren't alone. Not anymore. I found myself staring into something far more terrifying than I'd ever imagined. Chapter 6. My breath caught in my throat as I stepped back, instinctively pulling my companion with me. The figure in front of us was a grotesque blend of human and beast, eyes glowing like embers in the dark. A low growl rumbled from its throat, echoing off the cabin walls. The stranger, still crouched, didn't flinch. "Stay calm," they whispered. "It can sense fear." I stared, frozen. The creature moved closer, its claws scraping against the wooden floor, leaving deep gouges in its wake. My heart raced and I gripped the knife tighter. "What are you waiting for?" I hissed at the stranger. "Do something." "It's not aggressive unless you give it a reason," the stranger replied quietly, their gaze locked on the beast. "It's curious, just like we are." I couldn't fathom their calmness. "Curious? This thing could tear us apart." I glanced at my companion, who looked pale and wide-eyed. We needed an escape. "We have to go, now." "No." The stranger's voice rose, a spark of desperation in their tone. "If you run, it'll attack. You have to trust me." The creature advanced slowly, sniffing the air. It paused, its gaze shifting between me and my companion, as if weighing our worth. Cold sweat dripped down my back. I couldn't shake the feeling that we were cornered prey. "Tell me what to do," I yelled, my voice breaking. The stranger met my eyes. "Speak to it," they said, their voice barely above a whisper. "It understands more than you think." "Are you out of your mind?" I was shaking now, the fear palpable in the air. "You, please." The stranger's urgency broke through my panic. "Use the knife if you have to, but only if it attacks. For now, just be calm." With a shaky breath, I straightened myself, raising the knife slightly but not threateningly. "We mean no harm," I said, barely believing my own words. But as I spoke, something shifted in the creature's posture. It tilted its head, regarding me with an intelligence that both frightened and fascinated me. "Now don't look away," the stranger urged. "You need to connect." My mind racing, I searched for something to say. "We don't want to fight. We just want to get away." Silence enveloped us. The creature took a step back, the tension in the air thickening. But then it let out a low, rumbling sound that vibrated through the cabin, and that's when the unexpected happened. The floorboards beneath us creaked ominously, and I felt a tremor run through the structure. "What's happening?" I shouted, panic rising again. The stranger looked at me, eyes wide with understanding. "It senses the danger. We need to move. There's something else." Before I could respond, the room darkened, and another growl echoed from behind us, this one deeper and more menacing. Out of nowhere, a second creature emerged from the shadows, larger and more terrifying than the first. Its eyes locked onto mine, and I felt a rush of dread. "Follow me," the stranger shouted, pulling me and my companion toward the back of the room. We stumbled into a dim hallway, the growls now echoing off both sides. I didn't have time to think. There was nowhere left to hide. But I knew one thing for sure. We were not safe yet, and whatever was chasing us would soon catch up. Chapter 7. We dashed down the hallway, the sound of heavy footsteps reverberating behind us. My heart raced as I glanced back, catching a glimpse of the behemoth creature following just behind the first. It was gaining on us. "Turn left," shouted the stranger, yanking me away from a door that looked like it led to the outside. I followed without hesitation, adrenaline pumping through my veins. We stumbled into what appeared to be a storage room, cluttered with old tools and dusty crates. I could barely make out the contours of the space in the dim light filtering through a small window. The stranger pushed us behind a stack of boxes. "Stay quiet," they instructed, their voice tense. Loud growls echoed outside, and claws scraped against the walls of the hallway. I pressed my back against the cold wood, trying to regulate my breathing. It didn't feel like we were hidden, not with those creatures prowling just beyond our makeshift barricade. "Why did this happen?" I whispered urgently. "What are those things?" The stranger's face was etched with worry. "I don't know how they came here. I just know they're drawn to fear. They're hunting for something, and I think it's us. I can't do this." My voice cracked as I gripped the knife tighter. "What do we do?" "Listen." The stranger closed their eyes briefly, searching for a solution. "We wait for them to move on, then we find a way out." I nodded, though it felt like a flimsy plan. The growling intensified, punctuated by a loud crash. I tensed, imagining claws splintering the wood like paper. "What was that?" I hissed. But the stranger had a wild spark in their eyes. "They aren't interested in us anymore. I think something else has entered." Before I could ask what they meant, I heard the sound of heavy breathing, deeper than the creatures outside. It was close now, echoing around us. My stomach sank. "Something's in here with us," I gasped, but the stranger shook their head. "No, it's not them. Just trust me." The growls faded, but I could hear the new presence circling us. The air grew colder. "Stay still," instructed the stranger, their voice now a mere whisper. Then, to my horror, a shadow fell across the doorway. I could feel dread coiling in my stomach as the shape solidified, revealing another figure. This one was taller, even more menacing than the beasts outside. Dark fur and glistening eyes locked onto mine, and a chill ran down my spine. That's when I saw it. The creature's jaw opened, revealing rows of teeth far larger than the first two, and it let out a sound that shattered the momentary silence like glass. It was a howl, primal and echoing with a promise of chaos. "Run for that back window!" the stranger shouted, breaking my paralysis. "Now!" Before I could respond, the figure lunged forward, and instinct took over. I sprinted toward the window, adrenaline screaming in my veins. Just as I reached it, I felt a strong shove at my back, sending me through the opening. Pain bloomed as I hit the ground outside. My companion followed, tumbling after me. The night air hit me like a cold slap, but I barely registered it. We were free, but for how long? I could hear the chaos unfolding behind us. The beasts were still thrashing in the cabin. Panting, I looked at the stranger. What do we do now? They glanced back at the cabin, their expression filled with urgency. We need to move. They'll come after us, and we're not safe just yet. As we sprinted into the woods, a new fear settled in my gut. Whatever was happening was much bigger than I ever imagined, and I couldn't shake the feeling that it was only just beginning. Chapter 8. We ran deeper into the woods, branches clawing at my arms and face. The strangers stayed close, their presence a flicker of comfort in the chaos. I didn't dare look back. I could hear the feral howls growing fainter, but that didn't mean we were safe. "What's your name?" I gasped between breaths, trying to distract myself from the pounding of my heart. "Riley," they replied. "And you?" "Emma." As we paused to catch our breath behind a thick oak, I forced myself to think. "Riley, what were those things back there? Why were they after us?" Riley's brow furrowed. "I don't know all the details, but I've had a few encounters before. They seem to feed off fear. When you're scared, they sense it, like a scent in the wind." A shiver ran down my spine. I was starting to regret my decision to come to this farm. It had been a vacation getaway gone wrong, and now it felt like a nightmare I couldn't wake up from. Suddenly, a rustle in the brush caught my attention. I froze, fear gripping my throat. "Did you hear that?" I whispered. Riley nodded. "Stay quiet." We both crouched low, listening intently as the sound drew closer. My pulse quickened. I couldn't shake the idea that we were being hunted, and every snap of a twig felt like a countdown. Then, just as the noise reached its peak, a small creature stumbled into view. My initial panic morphed into confusion. It was a goat, disheveled and bleating as it stumbled towards us. I let out a breath I didn't realize I was holding. "What's a goat doing out here?" I wondered aloud. Riley shook their head. "This part of the woods is too thick for livestock." They stood up, focused on the goat. Maybe it escaped from a nearby farm. As we approached it, the goat kept bleating and pacing as if in distress. Riley knelt down, reaching a hand out gently. "Hey, little one, it's okay." Suddenly another noise erupted. A loud, feral growl echoed in the distance. My heart leaped again. This was the sound that had chased us earlier. The goat perked up, clearly sensing the danger. "Riley," I yanked on their arm, "we need to move." But before we could react, shadows began to creep through the trees. More creatures, their eyes glowing in the darkness, emerged from the underbrush. They were not the same as the first two, but had a different, more eerie presence. "Back!" Riley shouted, pulling me away from the goat. The creatures shifted uneasily, but they were closing in. I couldn't see how many there were, but fear tightened around me again like a vice. "Why are they coming for us?" I screamed, panic rising. "Look!" Riley pointed to the goat, which had been strangely quiet. Its eyes glowed too, matching the creature's intensity. "It can't be—" Before they could finish their thought, the goat let out a sound that mirrored the howls of the beasts. The echo plunged into my chest, and everything around us fell into darkness. I felt the ground drop beneath me. Fear shot through me as I was yanked into the void. The world around me twisted and blurred. Then everything went dark. I gasped, emerging from the void as if being reborn into the light, heart racing. The world was different now. It was day, bright and blinding, yet the stillness felt otherworldly, a paradox against the midnight horror I had just experienced. I was alone, kneeling on soft grass beneath a sky painted in an almost cartoonishly blue hue. I scrambled to my feet, looking around. There were no shadows lurking or growls stalking me, just an empty field, a safe distance from the woods where all that dread had unfolded. I blinked repeatedly, half expecting the chaos to return, but it didn't. The familiarity of my ranch lay just beyond the trees. I could see the barn standing tall, the sun glinting on its weathered wood. It was surreal. Nothing felt real, yet everything was exactly as it should be. With cautious steps, I approached my home, sensing an invisible weight at my back. I reached the barn door and paused. Could I really walk back into that gathering of memories, both warm and chilling? The events of the last night flooded back. The fear, the creatures, the whisper that said I should have left it alone. I pushed the door open, expecting torment. But silence greeted me. Dust motes floated lazily in the sunlight, and it felt more like a museum than a haunted space. I stepped inside, and my heart slowed as I took in the familiar surroundings. Nothing had changed. I glanced around, searching for remnants of the chaos, but there was nothing out of the ordinary, only the faint smell of hay and the quiet of a ranch at midday. The door swung shut behind me with a soft thud, as if sealing away the past. "Emma," I jumped at the familiar voice, realizing it belonged to Jake, my neighbor. He stood at the entrance, brow furrowed. "I've been looking everywhere for you. You won't believe what happened last night." I stood frozen, his words echoing in my mind. I felt the thread of reality unraveling, as if I was caught between worlds. I didn't know what to say. Did he have knowledge of the invisible terrors I had faced? "What is it?" I finally managed. There were just shadows. The cows were going wild, and something seemed to ripple through the air. He continued, eyes darting to the barn's interior. "There's this local folklore about creatures lurking in the woods, feeding off fear." My breath hitched, and I looked back toward where I had escaped. Did I bring the horror back with me? Had any of it been real, or merely fears playing out in my mind? Before I could follow that thread, I noticed something glimmering beneath a stack of old hay bales. I knelt, pulling a small object from the dust, a necklace, silver and ornately crafted, catching the light. It wasn't mine. My stomach twisted. "Hey, did you leave this here? Something strange was in the trees last night." Jake approached carefully, glancing from the necklace to me. "I don't know," I whispered, the weight of the last few days crushing down as unease seeped back in. Jake's eyes widened slightly. "We should call someone, just in case." "Maybe," I mumbled, holding the necklace tightly in my palm. I had no idea how it ended up here, but the more I dwelled on its glinting surface, the less I could shake the feeling that the nightmarish encounter was far from over. As I looked back into the deep shadows of the barn, I half expected to see those glowing eyes peering from the darkness. I felt unsettled, fragmented, like a puzzle with missing pieces. I left the barn and stepped out into the light, heavy thoughts battling for space in my mind. I thought about the choice I had made, about the creatures of fear and power that might still be entwined with my reality. A soft breeze rustled the trees as I made my way back to Jake. I glanced over my shoulder just once, half expecting nightmares to spill forth. There was nothing but the tranquil silence of the ranch, but I couldn't shake the unease that settled in my gut. I had ventured into a world I didn't fully understand, and even though I had escaped, I still felt the potential for darkness lingering just out of sight. Maybe someday I'd come to terms with it, whatever it was that lived in the shadows. But today wasn't that day. Instead, I walked on, clutching the necklace, and held on to the question: how much of it was real, and how much would forever remain a tangled nightmare?